Welcome to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast with your host, Brandon Seigel. I'm a published author, speaker, entrepreneur, and private practice strategist dedicated to transforming the way that healthcare functions. This podcast is all about empowering you to create the change you want to see. Let's dive in. Thank you for tuning in to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. In this episode, I'm talking about the HR effect. Building a workforce that moves the needle. So I think it's really important that I preface this episode. When I got into business, actually through the marketing and sales side of business knowledge. But what ultimately I attribute my success in business to was how I learned and achieved a new mindset through human resources. That HR, the study I did in HR is what was the game changer, because HR is bringing together this mindset of um, how do we get to perform as a people, as a group, as a team, and how do we align accountability, motivations, all those different things. And so when we're building that workforce that moves the needle, the number one missing link in my reality is the right human resources person in your practice, whether that's a consultant, fractional HR, an employee, but someone who understands how the way that I see HR. So I'm going to say it this way. I'm not a musician. My brother's a musician. I am not a musician, but from a musician analogy, in my opinion, the human resources professional in your organization is the conductor, literally making sure all the instruments are working together, literally putting all the accountability of you're too loud, you're too soft at this, at that. HR is the conductor of the orchestra in your private practice. And so as we look at it, we need to define HR's value. And so companies with strategic HR functions experience up to 22% higher productivity and lower turnover rates than those without dedicated HR leadership. Again, studies show organizations that invest in employee development, a core HR function, are more profitable, more resilient, with 70% reporting improved retention and innovation outcomes. Again, studies are showing effective onboarding led by HR improves new hiring retention by 82% and productivity by 70%. See, one of the issues I see is we're having the wrong people lead our clinicians. We want clinicians to lead clinicians, but clinicians weren't taught to lead clinicians. They can lead them clinically, but as an organization, as an ecosystem, as a business, we need our conductor. Because I'm going to ask it in this way. What would happen if I went to an orchestra and I had the strings section lead the strings and I had the drums lead the drums and it wouldn't work. And so it's so important. Even this stat that I saw, HR-led performance management systems increase employee engagement by up to 40%. Huge. Small businesses with formal HR policies are more likely to offer competitive benefits, which improve recruitment. HR-driven compliance practices reduce legal risks and fines, saving small business thousands annually. You get my point. What's my point? You need HR. You need it. You need someone who is taking a holistic view of your organization, who is conducting your orchestra from an HR mindset. Now, I want to be clear. Someone who says they're HR does not mean they're good HR. Finding an HR person is as hard as finding a billing person. Great talent is hard to find. I'm going to say it that way. Great talent is hard to find. And so it's really important that we understand different hats that sometimes fall under the umbrella of HR. So there's a recruiter hat. Think of HR as your talent scout, always looking for the next MVP to join your team. Now, it's interesting because I recently had 120 employee practice. I'm going to say that again, 120 employee practice. Their HR director predominantly was this recruiter hat, and an incredible, probably one of the best recruiters I've ever come across. But all the other hats of HR, she didn't feel confident with. And so ultimately, they came to us to be fractional HR to say, what can you do to complement her weakness areas? And we're doing it. But recognizing one thing that HR does is it generates revenue by recruiting. It's sourcing, screening, and selecting the right people. It's building an employer brand to attract top talent. It's creating structured onboarding, boarding that boosts your retention. These are all ways that you're getting to that next gear. It's also a compliance officer. So HR is your legal bodyguard. That's right, legal bodyguard, quietly keeping you out of courtrooms and headlines. HR protects your business from risk, navigating labor laws, OSHA, HIPAA, EEOC, and more, creating policies that prevent lawsuits and fines. It's also conducting internal audits. It's training to stay ahead of compliance issues. This is the one that most of you don't recognize, the culture architect. Culture isn't what's written on the wall, it's what HR helps you live every day. HR is going to shape the soul of your business. It's going to define your values. It's going to set the tone. It's going to reinforce culture through policies and behavior. It's going to manage conflict resolution and employee relations. It's going to drive diversity and inclusion in DEI initiatives. And I think it's going to ultimately get the group to define themselves and really exist on the highest level. And it's so interesting. I bring this up because having the right HR is everything. And I recently had another consultant reach out to me. He's like, Brandon, like, you do that HR thing too? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I might have a client for you. And I said, okay. And he starts to break down the client's needs. And he says, look, this is a client that needs, very heavy DEI consulting. Um, a lot of inclusive and diversity and all these different things. And I said, that's amazing. And I love it. And I know that they want it, but I said, I'm not the right person. And he's like, well, why? And I go, well, based on everything I'm hearing, and I'm not trying to be negative in this way, but I don't think I'm the right person. One, I'm not the right person because I'm not the right person. But two, I think they need to see someone that represents their interest. And I don't think they would see me as representing their interest. They would see me as a suit that has a predefined goal and objective, and I would not be accepted. And he's like, okay, that's good. And I made recommendations, but understanding that HR is a catalyst advocating for the employees on behalf of what the greatest good for the organization is. I want to say that again. HR represents being a catalyst for the employees on behalf of what will be the greatest good for the organization. So, hey, I am recommending that we have the following holiday schedule. And the organization might say, well, that's not good for us because then no one's working. No, that's good for us because our employees are going to come back rejuvenated. We're going to increase our retention. And by doing this action, you're taking care of the house. If you don't take care of the house will disintegrate. So HR advocates on behalf of the employees in correlation to what would be the greatest good for your organization. The next hat of HR, and this is an important one, is the performance coach. In the performance coach hat, HR isn't just about managing people, it's about unlocking their potential. It's about driving growth through people, designing performance reviews, feedback loops, identifying training needs, career paths, supporting leadership development, succession planning, developing the plan of care for every single employee to exceed their needs, wants, desires, creating your roadmaps, creating your dashboards, creating the elevated experience so that when that employee enters your business, they feel like there's a staircase and someone is walking them through every step of development to gaining what they came for. So, have you ever asked your employees, what did you come here for? Why do you stay here? Why would you leave? HR should be leading these conversations. They should be helping enhance not just the function of each employee, but how they are elevated to new levels and how they define the way they seek meaningfulness in your organization. So, the biggest thing that most people don't understand, comprehend, or identify with HR is I believe they have an operations partner hat. So, if you said to me, what is your right hand in your organization? My right hand is HR, my left hand is finance, and I'm left handed. But truly, finance on my left, operations, HR on my right. The operations partner hat. Behind every smooth operation is an HR pro, making it look effortless. HR keeps the engine running, managing payroll, managing benefits, managing HR tech systems, streamlining processes to reduce admin burden, supporting change management and organizational design. So when we look at these things, had that meeting with that client that we're helping who has an incredible recruiter HR manager, meaning that she recruits incredibly. And she has other great things she does, but there's definitely areas of HR that she admittedly so feels weak. The practice owner came to me and he came in hard. He said, well, all these things don't make me money. And I said, I disagree. I said, HR makes you money every day. He said, no, well, no, Brandon, they don't. And I'm like, yes, they do. So when we're measuring the ROI of HR, it's essential. So my question is this to that person. If I came in right now and every single person performed 20% above your expectation, would you be excited? Who would you give credit to? Well, I'd give credit to them. I'm like, what if I was the catalyst? Give me that ROI. Give me the credit. If I added 100 more doctors to your practice, does that add value? Yes. Every day I can make money for a practice, every day. So if a leadership program costs $10,000 and the results in it are $30,000 of increased productivity and reduced turnover, the ROI is 200%. It's there. It's there. You can literally 10x your company with HR. So it's so interesting. People call me because we do this fractional HR program where we run your whole HR. And someone's like, well, you must only work with large organizations. I go, what's funny is the organizations with under 10 employees value us more than the employees with 100 employees. That's an interesting statement. The private practices with under 10 employees value my HR services more than the practices with 100 plus. Very interesting. Now, I'm not saying I don't create extreme value for all of them, but I think when you've gotten to 100 employees, you don't recognize or see the same value. When you only have 5, 10 employees, you don't know what HR can do for you. You don't see how that benefits you. And so here are some key metrics I want you to track with HR. I want you to track your turnover rate. The reduction in turnover after HR intervenes is one of the things I like to look at. Again, reduction in turnover after HR intervenes versus turnover before HR intervenes. Time to fill, faster hiring equals less loss of productivity. Employee engagement scores correlates with retention and performance. Revenue per employee increases with better hiring, training, and retention. Absenteeism rate, lower rates suggest improved morale and wellness. training effectiveness, pre and post training performance comparisons. So here are some strategies I use to validate HR's value. One is I link HR initiatives to business goals, tie programs like onboarding, DEI, leadership development to measurable outcomes like retention, productivity, and patient satisfaction. I use before and after comparisons, measure KPIs before and after implementing each HR initiative to isolate its impact. Apply the Kirkpatrick model. Evaluate training programs across four levels: reaction, learning, behavior, and results. Again, I'm going to say that one more time because some of you don't know the Kirkpatrick model. It's a training program, and you're going to apply it to reaction, learning, behavior, and results. Track cost avoidance. Quantify savings from reduced legal risk, fewer hiring mistakes, and lower turnover. Survey employees and managers. Use feedback to assess perceived value and effectiveness from HR. Benchmark against your industry standards, comparing HR metrics to similar sized practices, showing competitive advantage. Create dashboards for stakeholders, visualizing HR impact, digestible data, especially for leadership buy-in. And here's the kicker. I want you to identify every hour the private practice owner is saving when they offshore or outsource their functions to HR. What if you could give back 10 hours of your day to day management of people to HR? There's opportunity there, there's value. So when we're building a workforce that moves the needle, HR starts by forecasting the skills, roles needed to meet your practice's short and long term goals. That's analyzing your current staff capabilities, identifying gaps in clinical, administrative, and leadership roles, creating a hiring and development roadmap to fill those gaps proactively. We need to hire for impact, not just fit. So instead of hiring reactively, hire in talent that helps you prioritize. So for me, I'm always hiring because I'm looking for that talent pipeline, clarity, performance expectations, understanding cultural alignment with your practice's mission, behavioral traits that support patient centered care and collaboration, and then performance driven culture. HR implements systems that turn individual performance into business results. Clear KPIs tied to clinical outcomes, patient satisfaction, and operational efficiency, and regular feedback loops and coaching so that we have recognition programs that reinforce high impact behaviors. It's so important. And then upskilling and career path. So, one of the things that HR is doing is they're in charge of upskilling your team. They're in charge of retaining top talent and reducing turnover. So we're going to offer targeting training in clinical, tech, and soft skills. We're going to build internal career ladders to reduce burnout and increase engagement. We're going to prepare future leaders through mentorship and succession planning. The other thing we want to do is we want to build some operational resilience. HR is going to ensure our workforce is agile and protected, manage compliance with labor laws, licensure, credentialing. We're going to support flexible work models. We're going to bring in the wellness programs. We're going to create contingency plans for staff disruption. What if we had a flex program? What if we had a summer off program? What if we had coverage and leaders versus, fillers? Different ways that we create the operational resilience of our organization. And it's really important that they implement data driven decision making so that the HR is tracking and analyzing metrics like revenue per employee, turnover and retention rates, patient satisfaction linked to staff and their engagement. This data helps refine hiring, training, and retention strategies to continuously improve our outcomes. And so when HR is embedded as a strategic partner, not just an admin function, it becomes the engine that drives growth, quality care, and long term sustainability in your private practice. And so I talk about this story because some of you know this. Um, about 11 years ago, we changed HR in one of my practices. And we brought in Scott. Scott's My right hand, I talk about him all the time, chief HR officer. And before that, my mother-in-law had one of her best friends as HR. That the person wasn't a fit for HR, in my opinion. Um, there are plenty of things that person was really great at. But again, that person was more on the sales side. Sometimes we put the recruiter as HR, and that was the wrong action in this case. And so Scott came in, and I saw immediate change in our organization. So the first thing was compliance, brought everything up to compliance. And I give this example, but I think it's really important for you to understand. We didn't even have a real handbook. Our handbook was copied off online and it had a phone booth in it. We didn't have a phone booth. Um, our pay scale was not consistent, fair, and reasonable across the board. Again, it was based on supply and demand, but it was not fair and reasonable across the board. Scott came in and brought all that together. Um, in addition, we had gotten rid of a 401k plan because the previous person wanted to cash out her 401k plan and it provided an opportunity. I don't know all the details why, but let's just say that. And when we implemented our new 401k, not only was it a fraction of the price, we created discretionary matching with a profit first mindset where profit sharing was divided up. And through that 8 years has changed our trajectory as a practice. And I bring this all up because HR is helping sculpt the food on the table. And so I'll say it this way: we're going to go on a ride, we're going to go to a destination. You're going to pick people to go on that road trip, right? Have you ever been on a road trip? What are the important pieces to that road trip? First of all, who's going to be in the car with you? And I always remember, I love that movie. I can't even think of it right now, but there's these movies with road trips, and I'm sure you've seen them. And it's disaster between noise and food and all those different things. HR is going to bring the right people on your vehicle. It's going to create a vehicle that has purpose, but it's going to align accountability with the purpose, which is the destination of outcome, to how much fuel. And by bringing in HR, one of the things that you're going to be able to do, you're going to be able to create an objective perspective on your practice. Because when the private practice owner or the clinician or whatever, they're either running off of empathy, they're running after just finances. You need an unconscious bias that comes in, and there's one goal and one goal only. The goal of HR is to do right by the people in order to do right by the practice. Did you know that small businesses with dedicated HR support, such as a full time HR generalist or outsourced HR services, experience a 12% lower employee turnover rate compared to those without? Highlighting the value of HR in improving retention and workplace stability. And I bring that up again, like, what if I could reduce turnover by 12%? 12%. That's huge. Now, there's one aspect which is that, and the other, as I earlier alluded to, is like, what if the performance improved? What if your employees felt more valued? What if your employees aligned with the mission, vision, and reason for being there? What if they felt as responsible for the company as you do? And part of that was truly HR. HR facilitating that, facilitating conversation, facilitating unconscious bias, facilitating policies and procedures that are for the people and by the people, but aligned with the organization. And so these are all reasons to do that. And one of the authors I really love is Laszlo Bach. And Laszlo Bach, this was inspired by Laszlo Bach. HR is the heartbeat of your business. Through strategic human resources, build a workforce that doesn't just work, but moves the needle towards greatness. I believe we're in the people business, and I believe you have this opportunity. And the opportunity is this: if you create the right intention, And if you align people that desire that intention, and if you have someone to drive your vehicle to that next gear, you will be unstoppable. And for me, the first hire that I always want to make in an organization is HR. Number one area I invest in, because HR ensures I take care of my people. No people, what can you do without people today? I mean, yes, AI, but I still need people. So, thank you for tuning into this episode of the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. I hope that you'll like us, subscribe, and reach out if you want to learn more about our different services. I so appreciate you tuning in and week out, because together we can thrive, not just survive. Thank you for tuning in to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. I'm incredibly grateful to each and every one of you. Exciting news. We're now available everywhere, from Spotify to Apple Podcasts to YouTube or anywhere you like to listen to your podcasts. So watch, listen, and reach out. If you loved this episode, please drop a 5-star review. It truly means the world to me. Are you looking for more ways to elevate your practice? If so, now is your chance. Reach out, go to my website, or email me at brandon@wellnessworksmp.com. And remember, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving.